Collect 400 flags. Collect 100 feathers. No damage. No damage. No damage. If you've played Assassin's Creed, you already know the kind of pain I'm talking about. In an expansive franchise such as Assassin's Creed with over 14 mainline entries, there's always that one achievement that stops being fun and starts feeling like hell. And today in this video, we're looking at exactly those, the hardest achievements in Assassin's Creed history, those that made players question why they even started going for 100%, whether it's gameplay or story related. And yeah, we're ending with the absolute worst one of them all. Whenever I think of Assassin's Creed 1, I get reminded more of its repetitive structure than its story or characters. And this achievement right here is like adding salt to the wound. I'm talking about the one called Conversationalist. Now, as the name suggests, it's about a conversation, but you'd be surprised to know that it's not about unlocking every dialogue with Al-Mualim, Malik, or any member of the Brotherhood. It's actually tied directly to the modern day, where you have to talk with Lucy, and that's what makes this such a big deal. Back in that era of Ubisoft, the modern day was designed to feel grounded and realistic, almost like real life, not a simulation. Because of that, after every memory block, whenever Desmond left the Animus, that was your one and only chance. Miss it and you miss the entire dialogue. And this is the most frustrating part, there's no real guidance for it. The modern day sections in AC1 are extremely straightforward, and there's no clear indicator telling you what to do or when to do it. So most players just end up skipping it without even realizing it. And if you miss it, you're not just locked out of dialogue, you're essentially forced to restart the entire game. Because in those older Assassin's Creed games there were no manual saves, which is exactly what makes this one of the most frustrating and honestly most brutal achievements to unlock in the entire game. ACT was pretty forgiving when it came to its predecessor in terms of trophies and achievements, but still by no means was it easy. The most frustrating part of the game was its collectibles, and this achievement is directly tied to that. In most cases, anything you could collect in the game had a map you could buy or unlock, making navigation and completion way easier. But for feathers, there was nothing. And that's exactly where the problem starts. Across every major city and location, you'd find anywhere between 5 to 10 feathers scattered around. The issue wasn't really collecting them, it was keeping track of them. Because unlike chests or other collectibles, feathers had no proper tracking system, no map markers, and as far as I remember, no reliable eagle vision tagging either. So once you started collecting them, it became really easy to lose track of which ones you'd already picked up. And that's where the real frustration kicks in, because if you're a completionist or trophy hunter, the worst feeling is realizing you're missing just one or two after clearing almost the entire map. And the only way to fix it is to go back and rescan the entire area again, one location at a time. And if that area has 27 or 28 feathers, yeah, you're basically f***ed. So I'm curious, how did you guys deal with this one if you went for 100%? If I talk about my method, it was usually crossing off locations digitally so I wouldn't lose track. Let me know yours too. We didn't have 100 feathers to collect in Brotherhood, although we did collect flags, but that's a whole different story. Anyways, there are a lot of hard things in the game, the most notable ones being the 100% synchronization objectives. But I won't talk about those since they aren't technically trophies. The ones I personally found the hardest, or I should say impossible, are the multiplayer trophies. And there's a solid reason I'm using that word. Back in January 2024, Ubisoft officially shut down the legacy servers for Assassin's Creed Brotherhood across all platforms. This effectively removed access to multiplayer, meaning those achievements became unobtainable for console players. Now, why am I even bringing this up? Because while some dedicated fans have managed to revive private servers on PC, allowing them to still experience multiplayer and earn trophies, that option sadly doesn't exist for the majority of players. And since most of the single player audience is on consoles, that means for them, these trophies are now completely locked out. Or I should say borderline impossible to complete. So unless you're on PC with access to those fan servers, your dream of platinuming Assassin's Creed Brotherhood is basically gone. Most of Revelations felt fairly easy, but the same cannot really be said for its DLC, The Lost Archive. It had one of the most frustrating or honestly just annoying trophies in the entire game. Impress Warren Vidic. First off, this DLC is unlike anything we usually see in Assassin's Creed. In fact, the series has a few weird DLCs like this, but this one stands out because it completely changes the gameplay style. It turns into a first-person block-based puzzle platformer that feels more like a precision platforming game than Assassin's Creed. You're basically placing blocks to create paths, timing your movements carefully, and trying not to fall while navigating these abstract levels. And if you mess up your positioning even slightly, you're done. And that's exactly what this trophy asks of you. complete an entire sequence without failing even once. Now for completionists, you already know how brutal that is, because this isn't about difficulty in combat or strategy, it's about precision under pressure. One wrong timing, one clunky movement, or even just a moment of hesitation and you're sent straight back to the start of the level. And if I remember correctly, the last time I played Revelations back in 2023, I failed this section around 6 times just because of how jarring the controls felt for something this precise. And every single restart felt worse than the last. So yeah, if you're going for a 100% trophy run, this is one of those achievements you just don't try. You endure. Oh boy, now we're talking, fellas. Assassin's Creed 3 is as annoying as it is massive. Literally, the game has more than one thing to curse it for, like the challenges that require you to unfuck the whole map or those damn mini games that just refuse to complete. So when I say the worst or the hardest trophy in the game, I mean it. And this one is called the Extraordinary Man. As the name suggests, it's linked with the Encyclopedia of the Common Man. And yup, if you've gone for 100% completion, you're probably getting nightmares already. And for a good reason. This encyclopedia wasn't just one of the worst tasks in the game, it was also one of the most frustrating. It had multiple phases and was heavily dependent on RNG and NPC behavior, with you constantly hoping the game doesn't bug out mid-progress. And trust me, whether I was playing the original or the remastered version, I was completely drained by it. Sometimes the NPCs simply wouldn't perform the required action, and even when they did, the observe mechanic would randomly mess up the tracking. Each homestead resident had 3 activities to record for the encyclopedia, and there were 13 residents in total. Some of them even spawned in different locations with no clear indication, leaving you to just figure it out through trial and error. I don't even know how I completed it, but it's honestly one of the main reasons I hesitate to even replay this game even when I want to. You might have guessed it already. This is another one of those near impossible trophies that are much harder to earn today than they were back in the day. And the trophy isn't just one achievement but an entire category of multiplayer trophies. The reason is pretty simple: player availability. And that's always been the biggest problem with multiplayer trophies. They have a designated lifespan. Miss that window and earning them becomes significantly harder. Luckily for Black Flag, the servers are still online, but because of the low player count, matchmaking can be painfully slow. And when you combine that with trophies like All-Rounder or Committed to the Cause, which as a matter of fact already requires an absurd amount of grinding, things quickly become a mess. At times, it feels like you cannot complete them even if you want to, and even if we ignore the matchmaking issues and focus on alternative XP methods like Wolfpack, it still takes dozens of hours of repetitive grinding. It's simply not fun, and many players gave up on Platinum because of how excessive the requirements are. For me at least, this remains one of the worst aspects of the game. Rogue thankfully didn't have all the tedious multiplayer or co-op trophies that plagued some of its predecessors and even a few future titles. But that doesn't mean there wasn't a hardest trophy for this one. The achievement in question is Master of the North Atlantic. Sounds easy enough on paper, but that illusion quickly disappears once you reach the Storm Fortress. This is without a doubt the hardest boss fight in the entire game. It makes you feel like a complete beginner even if your ship is fully upgraded. The battle gets harder with every passing moment. The lower its health gets, the more dangerous it becomes. And there's no way you're beating this fight on your first attempt. Dying is practically part of the learning process, forcing you to come up with an actual strategy instead of relying purely on upgrades. And honestly, it makes me wonder how the Jackdaw would have handled this fight. I mean, it was a larger ship with a far more experienced crew and a captain behind it. So would it have stood a better chance? I'm genuinely curious to know. Unity is still, in my opinion, the hardest Assassin's Creed game to 100%, even harder than the RPG titles, so it only makes sense that its trophies would follow the same pattern. This one is called Choreography, and it's not about performing a choreographed assassination or parkour sequence, but doing it with a partner in co-op. More specifically, you and another player have to kill a target at the exact same time, just like how the trailers made it look. Except in reality, it's nowhere near as smooth as that. So unless you've got friends who actively play the game or still have it installed somewhere, there's no easy way to get this done. Most random players either have their mics muted by default or simply are not coordinated enough to follow timing properly. I tried doing this myself and every attempt taught me one thing: never rely on random players for precision-based co-op trophies. coordination falls apart quickly and there's no guarantee that the other person will even understand what you're trying to do. So your best option is either finding players online through platforms like Reddit and coordinating properly, or accepting that this might be one of those trophies you simply move on from. And for a completionist, that's probably the worst feeling you can get. Did you ever expect Assassin's Creed of all franchises to pull something like this? Feathers in multiplayer were one thing, but going full GTA? In this trophy called Without a Grudge, you're required to run your carriage through breakable objects until you destroy a total of 5,000. Since the game features carriages, it might sound easy at first, but the number of breakable objects on the streets is far lower than you'd expect. Even if you complete the story along with all side content, you'll only reach around 1,000 to 1,500 at most. That means for the remaining 3,500 or even 4,000, you're forced to drive around the streets of London like a madman for 3 to 4 hours straight just to finish this one trophy. And while doing it, you're constantly running over civilians, so the disorganization warning keeps popping up, forcing you to hold back instead of going all out. It sounds fun at first, maybe for the first 20 minutes, but after that it just turns into pure repetition. Eventually, you're not even enjoying it anymore, you're just waiting for it to be over. This one's pretty fun for me and not necessarily hard, as Origins toned down difficulty for achievements quite a bit compared to its predecessors. And since I tend to complete everything by default in every game I play, I didn't really feel that Old Habits was difficult. With Origins introducing undiscovered question marks as locations across the map for the first time in the franchise, the trophy simply requires you to clear all of them. That's why I call it grindy rather than hard. The map is massive and it's split into a ton of regions, and some areas are locked behind higher levels. So completing everything effectively means you're going through the entire game's content anyway. And that's where the grind comes in. To level up, you need to complete side quests, and since a lot of trophies are tied to side content as well, you naturally end up progressing through most of it regardless. At some point your brain just goes, if I've already done this much, why not finish everything? So by the end you end up clearing the entire map and earning the platinum without even forcing it too much. And honestly, I didn't feel it as much because I already had the habit of clearing everything before the main story anyway. It just came naturally to me, almost like an old habit. Odyssey's map is huge, and there's no denying it's beautiful, but the problem comes when the game forces you to explore all of it through an achievement called Hermes' Homie. To unlock this trophy, you had to travel across all of Greece, including those NPC sections that honestly have very little to do with actual exploration. And that's where it starts getting tedious. The landmass itself is massive but enjoyable to explore. You can take your time, clear regions, and actually have fun with it. But the sea is a different story. It feels endless, repetitive, and far less engaging compared to everything else. And if you miss even a single tiny location, like that one small island tucked away in the corner of the map with that Poseidon statue, you won't get the trophy. You'll just be stuck on the map screen wondering what you missed. So unlike older games, it's not exactly hard, but it's not forgiving either. You just have to invest the time, and that's exactly what this achievement demands. While playing Valhalla, I noticed most of the achievements were fairly straightforward with relatively easy objectives. At first, I thought it might not even be that difficult to platinum. But then I came across Overdesign 2. Despite its absurd name, it's actually way beyond the usual grind. The description is simple enough. Kill 3 hard difficulty soldiers without breaking their shields while being on fire. And whoever came up with this idea probably should have been forced to try it themselves in real life. First of all, the game is mostly open plains and fields, and enemies are usually concentrated in forests or camps. So the environment itself is already working against you, since you need to set yourself on fire and still manage to engage specific enemies under strict conditions. And even when you do find the right setup, things start messing up quickly. Either the enemy count isn't right, or you end up dying from the fire before you could properly execute it. Valhalla is a long game, and I genuinely enjoyed it for the most part. But this trophy, it really tested my patience. And unless you get lucky with the right location and setup, it's not something you can pull off easily. A game doesn't usually let its worst part become the center of focus, right? Well, that's not really the case with Mirage. In the trophy called Eagle's Will, you have to do something you wouldn't normally even try in this game. Survive a conflict for 10 minutes without dying. And if you've played Mirage, you already know how unreliable the combat system can feel. You can barely survive a minute in open combat without getting overwhelmed. And if you stay engaged for too long, your wanted level increases, eventually forcing you to deal with a Shakriya, a bounty hunter who can take you out in just a couple of hits. Things get even worse on higher difficulty settings, especially with permadeath enabled, where every mistake becomes permanent. And if you still want to complete it, the usual method is to enter a conflict, find an area with strong parkour routes, and just keep looping around for 10 minutes until a trophy finally pops. At least, that's how I did it. Shadows was a technical marvel by Assassin's Creed standards, and the developers clearly wanted the players to appreciate that. One of the ways they did that was through the Sumi-e painting activities, and the achievement tied to them was called a rare occurrence. As the name implies, you have to visit specific locations at specific times and during specific seasons to find certain animals and paint them. On paper it sounds easy, but trust me, it isn't. The 4 seasons combined with the day and night cycle make these encounters surprisingly easy to forget about. The game has so much going on that these activities can quickly get buried beneath everything else you're doing. And the worst part is that just like the feathers from the older games, there's no proper way to track them. If you complete one and come back later, there's a good chance you'll end up questioning whether you already did it or not. And that's only half the problem. Without a guide, finding these animals is incredibly difficult, unless you happen to stumble across them naturally while exploring. But that's only the beginning. Alongside the regular paintings, there's also a set of legendary paintings tied to much rarer animals. Take that coin-wobbling fox for example. Just look at where he is. Most players would not even find it on their own. And there are 6 or 7 of these rare encounters scattered throughout the game. As a matter of fact, I spent quite a while unlocking this achievement because it's one of those trophies that forces you to slow down and appreciate what the developers created. Brilliant, but also tiring. So, I guess that's all, is it? Well, I did promise to give it one definitive achievement that I consider the hardest, and in my personal opinion, there's no bigger pain than the Extraordinary Man from Assassin's Creed 3. Hear me out. The reason is simple. Most difficult achievements can eventually be mastered through skill, patience, or repetition, but this one cannot. You're often left waiting for NPCs to do exactly what they're supposed to do, hoping the game behaves and the tracking system doesn't fail you. And because this entire thing depends on NPC behavior, it becomes twice as frustrating as almost anything else on this list. I know Assassin's Creed 1 could be a strong contender, but at least there you can restart or on PC even rely on save files. With this one, there's no shortcut. And with that, I think we're done. Seriously, Assassin's Creed is one hell of a franchise to platinum. Some of these achievements were genuinely fun, while others, especially the multiplayer ones, completely tested my patience. But what about you guys? Have you managed to platinum every Assassin's Creed game, or did you settle for a basic 100% completion? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing because it really helps our little brotherhood grow. With that being said, I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care and goodbye.